Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at onpurposely.com.
Today, on The Bold and the Faithful, a woman loved by her husband, taunted by her rival, and remembered by her God. Get ready to meet Hannah, who prayed one of the boldest prayers in the Bible. Yes, it's the Bible for busy people. I'm Erica, your host, and no, it's not a soap opera, but it almost sounds like one. I don't know about you, but sometimes my life feels like a soap opera. Like I'm caught up in a whirlwind of drama some days. So my bold prayer for you today is that you would feel remembered and seen by God by the end of this episode. So join me now in 1 Samuel chapter 1, beginning in verse 1. There was a man named Elkanah who lived in Ramah in the region of Zuph, in the hill country of Ephraim. He was the son of Jeroham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zuph of Ephraim. Elkanah had two wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah did not. Now, I want to pitch a small tent here and say it had to be really hard for women in the Old Testament days. Can you imagine sharing your spouse? Seems like it would lead to all sorts of fights and rivalries, as you and I are about to read, picking up our story now in verse 3 of 1 Samuel 1. Each year, Elkanah would travel to Shiloh to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of Heaven's armies at the tabernacle. The priests of the Lord at that time were the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas. On the days Elkanah presented his sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to Peninnah and each of her children. And though he loved Hannah, he would give her only one choice portion, because the Lord had given her no children. So Peninnah would taunt Hannah and make fun of her because the Lord had kept her from having children. Year after year, it was the same. Peninnah would taunt Hannah as they went to the tabernacle. Each time, Hannah would be reduced to tears and would not even eat. "Why are you crying, Hannah?" Elkanah would ask. "Why aren't you eating? Why be downhearted just because you have no children? You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons? Oh, Elkanah. All right, we're going to pick up the story now in verse 9. We're about to see how faithful God is going to be to Hannah. Once, after a sacrificial meal at Shiloh, Hannah got up and went to pray. Eli, the priest, was sitting at his customary place beside the entrance of the tabernacle. Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord, and she made this vow. Here comes the bold prayer. "O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime, and as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut." As she was praying to the Lord, Eli watched her. Seeing her lips moving but hearing no sound, he thought she had been drinking. "Must you come here drunk?" he demanded. "Throw away your wine." Can you imagine a priest or a pastor saying that to you? "Oh, no, sir," she replied. "I haven't been drinking wine or anything stronger, but I am very discouraged, and I was pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think I am a wicked woman, for I have been praying out of great anguish and sorrow." "In that case," Eli said, "go in peace. May the God of Israel grant the request you have asked of him." "Oh, thank you, sir," she exclaimed. Then she went back and began to eat again, and she was no longer sad. Oh, I feel like there's so much we can learn from Hannah here. She poured her heart out to the Lord. She felt that she was heard by him, and then she was able to eat, and she was no longer sad. Are you in a place where you just need to pour out your heart to the Lord and tell him about the great anguish in your soul? He will listen to you as he listened to Hannah. Verse 19 now. The entire family got up the next morning and went to worship the Lord once more. Then they returned home to Ramah. When Elkanah slept with Hannah, the Lord remembered her plea, and in due time, she gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, I asked the Lord for him. The next year, Elkanah and his family went on their annual trip to offer a sacrifice to the Lord and to keep his vow. But Hannah did not go. She told her husband, wait until the boy is weaned. Then I will take him to the tabernacle and leave him there with the Lord permanently. Whatever you think is best, Elkanah agreed. Stay here for now, and may the Lord help you keep your promise. So she stayed home and nursed the boy until he was weaned. When the child was weaned, Hannah took him to the tabernacle in Shiloh. They brought along a 3-year-old bull for the sacrifice and a basket of flour and some wine. After sacrificing the bull, they brought the boy to Eli. Sir, do you remember me? Hannah asked. I am the very woman who stood here several years ago praying to the Lord. I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he has granted my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord his whole life. And they worshiped the Lord there. Oh, how I love this story, especially because early in my marriage, I wasn't getting pregnant right away. And I was sad. It was not for a long time, but I remember the feeling in my heart every time I took a pregnancy test, and the answer was no. But in good time, in God's time, he gave me a daughter named Hannah. And my mom's friend cross-stitched Hannah's prayer for me. And at the top it says, for this child I prayed. And I recently found that. And I remembered God's faithfulness to me. He is a faithful God, because what we just read was not the end of Hannah's story. Let's read 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse 21. And the Lord blessed Hannah, and she conceived and gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. God was faithful to Hannah. Hannah was faithful to God. And he is faithful to you and I. You can trust him. Pour out your heart to him. He is listening, for you are loved. You. Thank you for making time for the Bible for Busy People today. If being part of this community is a blessing to you, it's super easy to share this podcast with someone you love. We're all about spreading the hope of Jesus like butter. So if you've got a moment to write a review, boy, we'd really appreciate that. Maybe you need a little prayer today, or you're ready to take that next step with God. I invite you to check out our show notes. You're going to find lots of encouragement there. This podcast is one branch on a tree called Purposely, a podcast network designed with practical podcasts to help you find and thrive in God's purpose for your life. If you've got a pulse, you've got a purpose.